All right, so now after that, we're going to move on to our football weekend picks, starting with week 5 of the college football season. And our pick for this week is Notre Dame, who's 11 versus number 17, Duke. We are both going with Notre Dame in this one. Notre Dame obviously just lost to Ohio State last week, dropping their first game of the season. Duke is still undefeated, winning their last game against Connecticut 41-7. Obviously, there's a little bit of a discrepancy in opponents there between Ohio State and Connecticut. Still giving a whole lot of credit to Duke for how well they played this season. Start off was obviously that first game against Clemson. But again, we are both going with Notre Dame in this one. Just think they're the better team. Sam Hartman, he's going to continue his Heisman candidate level season. And running the ball, I think they'll be considerably better as well. So, yeah, overall, I would just go with Notre Dame in this one.
Yeah, Notre Dame just looks like the better team. They had an unfortunate loss to OSU. They could have won that game. Had a few things knock on, completely not their way at the end. Credit to Duke this season though. Duke is playing really good. Riley Leonard looks decent. They got some good stuff to they deserve to be at where they are at 17. Could maybe even argue that they go up a little higher. Not sure. Their opponents, aside from Clemson, maybe would hold that back. But Notre Dame has had the better season so far. Sam Hartman and Audrey Esme having really, really good seasons each. Yeah, I think that it might be a good game. I think it should be a good game, but I don't think that Notre Dame is going to be in as scary of a situation by the end of the fourth quarter as they were with OSU. So Notre Dame should take this one. Good bounce back game for them. Then we're going to move into the NFL. We have 4 games. One of them is just going to be really fun to talk about. The other ones we think are going to be good matchups. We'll start with the good matchups. Our first one is a rivalry game, of course, of the Ravens versus the Browns. Pretty tough matchup this season. Browns defense has been really good. Ravens offense has been a little shaky at times. Had some unfortunate things go against them against the Colts last week towards the end of the game, especially in overtime. Justin Tucker missing a field goal was also uncharacteristic. But despite all that, Terrence and I are both going to go with the Ravens. I do just trust the Ravens more as a team. Lamar Jackson, especially after week 1, has really come into fruition. Starting to get a good connection with Zay Flowers. Just haven't found him in the end zone yet. I think that'll get better. Mark Andrews has been good. Despite the injuries, the rushing game has been pretty good. Of course, Lamar leading the way for that. Browns not having a bad season either. Really good defensive things. Deshaun Watson, though, has been really, really shaky. Nick Chubb is down. Jerome Ford took up that role pretty well last week. But, this is going to be a good game. I could see like a 24-21 Ravens victory or something like that. But I do think the Ravens get it out over their divisional rival.
Yeah, I'd probably say same thing around that score, 28-24, something like that, Ravens. But you said it, though. The Browns, their defense, I mean, the 2 games that they won this year, they allowed 3 points, which, I mean, that's incredible. Obviously, first game was against the Bengals. Joe Burrow was coming off the injury first game. We've seen how they've looked, especially on Monday night, even with Joe Burrow in there. And then against Tennessee, who's really still trying to figure out what the heck they're doing down there. Allowed 3 points against them as well. The game that they lost, though, allowed 26 points. But a lot of that was due to Pittsburgh defense. So right now, the Browns defense is allowing under 200 yards a game, which is, I mean, this is NFL level. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Only 52 yards rushing, 136 yards through the air. On the other end, the Ravens offense, you did say it's been kind of shaky. It's not been super explosive, but it's been pretty good. Obviously, running the ball is, a big part of their offense. They probably have the closest in terms of passing and rushing balance. And even with J.K. Dobbins out, I think that'll still continue this week. And they did get kind of hosed last week against the Colts at the end there. So I think they'll have a bounce back game and take this one as well. And then probably the biggest game of the week, I should say, is the Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, this has been a pretty big matchup the past few years, especially last year in the playoffs and that week 3 game, I think, last year, where you pretty much had half the Buffalo Bills almost having a heat stroke in that Miami Heat. So this one's pretty important. 3-0 versus 2-1, early season matchup. Both of us do not believe that the Dolphins will score 70 points again. I don't think anybody in their right mind thinks that. Bills defense is obviously considerably better than what the Broncos defense has been this season, despite the 70-point output last week. Um, but yeah, I think right now, even with the game last week for the Bills, they absolutely dominated the Commanders, and then the week before that, they dominated the Raiders. That's not going to happen this week. We're both going with the Dolphins in this one. I think the offense is still just going to be too much for the Bills defense, and they'll take the win probably 34-28.
Yeah, I would agree. About 34-28 is a pretty good prediction. Obviously, the Dolphins are not going to be putting up 70 points every week. Probably won't happen again. Hadn't happened for like 60 something years, so I wouldn't expect it to turn around and happen back to back weeks. Bills defense is going to be the Dolphins' biggest challenge so far this season. I mean, they've faced good teams and good defenses. The Patriots defense gave them a little bit of a fight. The Chargers defense didn't do much, but they still had their moments here and there. But yeah, the Dolphins just have so much going on offense. I mean, Tua has had a great season. Tyreek Hill has been doing really well. The rushing room for the Dolphins has been really good. There's just a lot going on for that Dolphins offense. That's just going to be a lot for the Bills to contain. And I think that they'll be able to get it every now and then, but just not fully keep up with it. And unfortunately, I think that the Bills are a little more prone to mistakes than the Dolphins have been this season. So if it does get to something like that, this game might not be able to sustain more than one or two picks from Josh Allen. And that's we'll just have to see where that goes. So I think each of these teams are facing their toughest opponent so far in this week. This is always a really good rivalry game. But I do think that the Dolphins will be taking this one. This next one is an interesting one because the matchup seems really easy to pick. But if you look at their records, then it's like, well, these teams are both doing well. But there's some context there. We have the Eagles versus the Commanders. Good divisional matchup. Commanders the only team to give the Eagles or give Jalen Hurts a loss last season and the regular season. This time they are led by Sam Howell. However, Commanders got to their 2-1 position by beating the Cardinals and Broncos and then losing to the Bills. So not that the Eagles have played amazing opponents either. I mean, the Patriots are tough. The Vikings are tough. They made quick work of the Buccaneers. But this is going to be, I think, an easy Philadelphia pick for me. Terrence picking Philly as well. Eagles are just, there's so much more going on. Now, they haven't played the best football this season either. They've struggled. They've had some rough moments. Jalen Hurts with 3 TDs, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions so far to start this season off. DeAndre Swift has started to kind of get into a groove these past 2 games. But this hasn't been like the perfect Eagles team that we saw through a lot of last season, where it was thinking, man, who's going to bring these guys down? The way the Eagles have played has been a little shaky. Looks like somebody could feasibly bring them down. And with Sam Howell, with Brian Robinson Jr., maybe the Commanders could get up there and make a move. But unfortunately, I think with the way they played this season, I mean, they had a 35-33 game against Denver, 20-16 against the Cardinals. Good wins for them, but it just doesn't really speak to the talent that they're about to face against the Eagles. And I think that this could unfortunately be closer to the Bills game than their first 2 games.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, 3-0 for the Philly is 3-0, so you can't take that away from them.
Yeah.
Obviously, expecting them to replicate last year's team, you know, exactly, that's just not going to happen because they were almost as good as they could have been last year. So, um, expecting that to be replicated is not realistic, but I think we are kind of expecting them to be a little bit better. We're expecting that passing game to kind of wake up a little bit more. Um, it was a decisive win against Tampa, but it wasn't completely dominant. Defensively they were really good, but offensively it still hasn't gotten up to that point just yet. Obviously, just like you said, DeAndre Swift, he's kind of getting to the swing of things. Just the passing game that kind of needs to wake up a little bit more. Um, but I think the defense is probably going to be the ones to carry them in this game. I think the Commanders, yeah, they did put up 35 against Denver. They won 20-16, like you said, against Arizona. Bills game, I think that's just more of a complete talent discrepancy there. But I think the Commanders are probably more in the middle range of, the 35 points against Denver, losing by 30 plus points against Buffalo, probably more in the middle of that. So they're an okay team, not a great team. I wouldn't say they're too good just yet, but they're still growing under this new ownership. But yeah, I think this game, will be dominated by the defense, especially that run defense for the Eagles. The Commanders are going to have to start to throw the ball to beat them, and that's where the Eagles have been kind of suspect so far this season. But I think the defense will still be dominant in this one, and I think that passing offense for the Eagles will start to wake up, and they'll probably win. I'd say 27-13, something like that. And then moving into our last game, we shouldn't laugh because our team is 0-3 facing another 0-3 team, but I can at least take some solace in knowing that the Panthers have not allowed 70 points in a single game or get beat by 30 like the Bears did last week. There's a lot to say about both these teams, and I'd say this is more of a must win for the Broncos because even though both are 0-3, I think we expected more out of the Broncos this season. Obviously, um, we thought Justin Fields was going to improve immensely this year. With new weapons, DJ Moore stealing them from Carolina. All the moves that they made on both sides of the ball. Still didn't expect them to have like insane turnaround just from last year because they did get the number one pick. The Broncos, at least, you get some of your guys back you might have had injured, even though they've had injuries again this year, unfortunately. Bring in Sean Payton, you're expecting more. And having one of the most embarrassing performances that I've ever actually seen in the NFL last week against, albeit a supercharged offense in Miami, like we expect more from them. And funny enough, we're both going with the Broncos in this one. And it's only, and I know this might contradict ourselves here, but it's only because the Bears offense is just that anemic right now. I think it's still going to take some time for them to kind of figure out what's going on there. And I know how bad the Broncos defense has been. They've even without last week, they've been pretty bad. They're out to almost 500 yards allowed on defense per game. I mean that's college level bad. I mean that's low level college bad. But I still think you still got more veterans over there in Denver. I think this is just this just it's bad. I feel bad for anybody that has to actually watch this game. I feel bad for these fan bases as well as the Panthers. But yeah, I think the Broncos. It's just because the Bears' offense is just sputtering out there right now, and the Broncos' offense at least is somewhat alive. So yeah, even with the Broncos' defense being as bad as it is, I think the Broncos will take this one.
Yeah, this one is a weird one to pick. We've seen things like this last year. There's I think a Broncos Colts game last year where it was two of the more mediocre teams in the league, and I mean it was a slow game. Sometimes games like this will end up being really slow. This one maybe could turn into a shootout because of the way these teams look. But the Broncos, the Bears offense has just not been really good. And as you said, I mean this is a must win for the Broncos. I think that there could probably be no worse 2 weeks for the state of Colorado football than to get blown out by Oregon, to have 70 points allowed from the Dolphins. So then Colorado will have to play USC, and then to lose to the Bears in a 2 week span would be horrible. There's no better outlook from there. I think the Broncos are a stronger looking team. Right, there's a little more upside to that offense. Russell Wilson has played decently. He's doing fighting for his life in some of these games. Maybe they should have deserved the Commanders win, just couldn't quite get that one out. Justin Fields, on the other hand, has not looked amazing. Wasn't able to break 100 passing yards last week against the Chiefs defense, which isn't a defense that I would say is like one of the best in the league by any means. So both of these teams have some things, have a lot of things to fix. But the Bears just look like probably arguably the worst team in the league. Haven't been able to utilize DJ Moore. Justin Fields hasn't looked comfortable. Hasn't made great decisions. The Broncos, I've had aside from last week, I've had some hope. They barely lost to the Raiders by a 1 point loss there. Barely lost to the Commanders, just 2 points there. Obviously, Miami put them on prime time essentially, but I think they've looked like the better team this season. Whereas the Bears got beat by Jordan Love's Packers by 18. They lose by 10 to Baker Mayfield's Bucks, and they lose by 31 to the Chiefs. So definitely hasn't looked good the whole season for the Bears, whereas the Broncos have had some moments where I was like, they could win this game. So not the worst 0-3 start for the Broncos, but man, they looked really bad. And I think that they win this game. But if they don't, man, This one's going to be rough. I'm not sure if we get this in our 1 p.m. slot here in the Southeast, but I would honestly be interested to tune in just to see how these two teams are able to face off against each other.